I'm Wayne Epps here with Zach Joaquim. We're here with another episode of Ram Talk with the RTD. It's getting down to the wire here. We're going to break down VCU's last couple of games against UMass and St Bonaventure and look ahead to the regular season finale on Saturday against St. Louis. Just to dive right into the UMass game this past Saturday, it was kind of defensive dominance for VCU going up to Amherst. It was a kind of an interesting trip for them. They had a snowstorm up in Massachusetts, so they left a couple of days early, or a day early on that Thursday for the game. Got up there and practiced on Friday up there, and then played really well, even though they were there an extra day. UMass is one of the best three-point shooting teams in the league. They make league high 9.7 threes per game, shoot 37% from three. VCU held them to just about 15% from deep. They held their leading scorer in conference play, Rich Kelly, scoreless. This is overall just kind of dominating defensive performance for a team who obviously has played great defense all year, but it was one of the, I would say, highlights is from a defensive perspective, the way they played in that game.
And it's something that we've seen from VCU. I think of the Mason game, and I think of the conversation going into what we all hoped was going to be the NCAA Tournament last year. Obviously, that never happened. But with the Oregon game, a team that relies heavily on the three-point shot, so does Mason, so does UMass. VCU, with how good that three-point and perimeter defense is, can make those teams look really bad sometimes when they're not hitting, and that was the case with UMass.
Yeah, just extended scoring droughts. Really, in that first half, it held on to 25.8% overall shooting from the field, and had a big-time halftime lead. UMass did outscore VCU slightly in the second half, but VCU already had that big lead.
They were in cruise control a little bit, yeah.
And never obviously seriously threatened there. One of the big things, obviously, the way VCU likes to create their offense is off turnovers. They had 27 of their points off 22 UMass turnovers, and that win was important in multiple ways because, one, it locked VCU into that top 4 seed, which obviously every team wants to get that double bye. And the A-10 tournament, which is so important to cut your path to an A-10 title.
It's so hard to string enough wins together if you don't have that double bye. It's exhausting to try and go all the way through the A-10 tournament.
Very. Which is funny enough, VCU, their one A-10 tournament title win that they did get back in 2015. They did the 4 wins in 4 days, but that's so strenuous to do to play 4 games in 4 days. So if you're able to cut that by a day and cut it to 3 days to get to the A-10 final, then that's huge. So they locked into that double bye. Still sitting in second place here. Also was Mike Rose's 100th win at VCU in his 5th season. So now after
seems like he just took the job, man. That went by fast.
It did. So after that, he was 150, which is kind of weird. Like, it's kind of 50 more wins than losses exactly. And then obviously after Tuesday's 101 and 50. And then on an individual level, Keyshawn Curry continued his torrid pace. Finished the month of February with 18 points, and he averaged 14.4 points overall in the month of February. Just by far his biggest month of his career now as a senior, so he continued that. So
we can't talk enough about his explosiveness going to the rim. He's so much fun to watch, and it seems like when you get objective commentators who maybe don't see VCU day in and day out, you hear a lot of oohs and ahs about, wow, this kid is explosive going to the rim, because it turns your attention, and when you're an objective observer watching that game, I think that's one of the first things from VCU that pops out at you.
Yeah, so fast and can jump out of the gym. One of the standout plays that stuck in my mind from the UMass game was a dunk that he had on a fast break, throwing it down with one hand, like just cruising out. I would have loved to know how fast he was going. I know some athletes in certain sports wear little trackers that tell you like exactly.
Yeah, you
how
see that
fast.
a lot in soccer, right?
Yeah, I would have loved to see how fast he was going on that dunk because he was flying. But yeah, it was another big game for him. So it was a 7th straight win heading into a Tuesday matchup, which was another big-time matchup against St Bonaventure. Another of the teams that was considered one of the top in the league heading into the season.
And that made VCU look really bad earlier in the season up in Olean.
Yeah, that was one of their worst losses of the year. Worst losses in a while, really. They lost by 20 up there at St Bonaventure. This matchup back at home, Keyshawn Curry and Vince Williams talked afterwards that Mike Rose really brought up that last loss in January a lot heading up to in that game, just saying that wasn't acceptable, losing by 20 to them. And it was different circumstances, obviously. This Tuesday, St. Bonaventure was out without Oshunwi, who is one of the best players in the league.
We learned that right before game time too, right?
Yeah. He rolled his ankle pretty bad at St. Joe's on Saturday, and so it was kind of a day-to-day or game-time decision heading in, and so he ended up coming out, in street clothes. So we saw he wasn't going to play. And
a rim protector like that can be such a huge piece strategically to how you attack a game offensively for VCU, right? It just seemed like they had so much joy in the lane and the paint getting to the rim than they did up in Bonaventure, and he's obviously a huge part of that.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, he's critical to what they do. And just Mike Rose talked about afterwards, like when backups are starting, you want to go at them, and so that's what they did. Like you said, scoring at the rim, dunks, layups, everything they could to try to score inside, and ended up outscoring them 44-30 in the paint. I rebounded them by 11, 40-29. So it was kind of dominance inside without that key piece inside. So, that extended the win streak to 8. And kind of keeps VCU alive for that regular season title. Davidson ended up beating George Mason last night, so they're still sitting there in first place. But with some of the tiebreakers, if Davidson was to fall to Dayton on Saturday and VCU wins at St. Louis, and they're both finished with the same league record, VCU would be the regular season champion because of VCU would have a better winning percentage against Dayton, which is the highest common opponent. So with that win, they kind of stay alive in that regular season title race.
I spoke too soon 2 weeks ago when we were talking about their at-large chances, and when we were saying they probably need to win the A10 tournament to get into the NCAA tournament, and that's not the case anymore with how hot this team is right now. They are on the right side of the bubble, but they're still very much in the conversation. If you lose at St. Louis and then get an early exit in the A10 tournament, then the at-large bid would probably be on life support. But they're in a really good place to, if you get that win at St. Louis, then they're going to go into the A10 tournament feeling good about their at-large chances.
Yeah, I agree. And that St. Louis game, that's a quad one opportunity, which is obviously huge. Right now, they're 2-2 in those games. The wins were at Dayton to begin league play, and at Davidson when Davidson was ranked 25. The losses were to Baylor and UConn in the Bahamas. But obviously those quad one wins are the most valuable you can get. So getting to finish the season with the opportunity, that's big for VCU because St. Louis is 63 in the net. Top 75 on the road is a quad one. So that's a huge opportunity. Before we move on to the bracketology, I want to talk real quick about Vince and Keyshawn some more. Because Tuesday was their last home game at the Siegel Center. At least definitely for Keyshawn. Yeah. Keyshawn said last week that he doesn't think he's going to come back for the extra year. Vince is still thinking about it. And they had their senior day festivities last week against George Mason, but Tuesday was kind of their official last sort of
in front of the Siegel Center crowd. Yeah.
So they got the traditional, they checked out both late in the game. Keyshawn kind of waved to the crowd.
Got the standing ovation.
Yeah. So, we got a chance to talk to them a little bit about their careers after the game, and both kind of funny enough, we're just talking about how fast it goes by, which I think anybody, their collegiate experience would probably agree with just how fast those 4 years can fly by. But I think what's cool with both is just like the patience that both have had throughout their careers in different ways. Like, I think the patience showed up with Vince in the fact that he had so many injuries throughout his career. He had, 2 off seasons that really were kind of evaporated because of shoulder surgeries. He's had concussion, broken hand, ankle injuries, all kinds of things.
He's been a warrior.
And pushed through to now be a leader of this team. And, in the conversation for, I think, 18th Player of the Year, definitely a lock for first team, I would say. Keyshawn Curry didn't play hardly at all his freshman year. Had some struggles with consistency on the offensive end, and now being, averaged 14.4 points in the month of February, being one of VCU's go-to scorers now. I think that's huge for him. And one thing I thought was really cool, they were asked after the game just like who, when they came in, were big influences on them, like older players when they came in, and they both immediately said De'Anthony Jenkins, kind of just with De'Anthony's demeanor and just always positive vibe that he brought to the gym. And, Keyshawn said that he still talks to De'Anthony, and also Xavier Jackson, who was an older guy on those teams too. He talked to them for hours just about his game, and they kind of helped keep his spirits up. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
That's interesting about Xavier because De'Anthony, obviously a big figure in the VCU community in the last few years. Xavier, not so much. So that's interesting that he had such a significant influence on them.
Yeah, I agree. Because he was a guy, he didn't get a ton of playing time, when he was here, but and it seemed like a little bit more on the quiet side. But I guess behind the scenes, he was a guy who was kind of, as Keyshawn Curry said, sort of a big brother. For them when they came in as freshmen. So it was interesting to see it, or hear them talk about the influence that those guys had on them. So.
That's something you love about this program a lot. I think back to Michael Sims and a couple years ago when he was kind of showing people around the city and recruits when they were coming in. And it seems like everyone talks about it being a family within their program, and that sounds pretty cliche, but I think at VCU that's certainly true. And you see that when you see guys leave and go play pro, maybe even go play overseas, and they are still in contact with current players and still mentoring them. which is not something that they have to do by any means. That's just by their own volition. And so that's awesome to see those connections stay even after guys leave the program, because that's, the foundation for strong relationships in a program and 100%. Longevity.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think VCU's kind of become that summer destination for a lot of former VCU guys who still come back to use the basketball development center to train during the summer. Pros coming back, whether it's Breonte Weber, Trorion Graham. I'm sure Bones will be back at some point. Just all those guys over the years. Brandon Roselle, when he was still playing, now obviously Brandon is on his own staff at VCU. But when he was playing really well overseas, he would come back in the summers, and so many guys. And so the current VCU guys who are in town doing their summer training program, the 8-week training, they get a chance to pick their ear of the pros, play pickup against the pros. And so I think that's a big part of VCU's culture of just those former guys coming back and getting a chance to kind of lend some pointers to the current guys. So that's huge. And it still happens, obviously informally too. Keyshawn talking to Dariante and Xavier on the phone for hours. So like you said, that's huge.
And that carries over generations too, right? Because now you would think that Keyshawn and Vince will be those guys for the next group of guys coming up.
Yeah, 100%. Which Keyshawn said, he was asked, a couple weeks ago about the plays he's been having recently, and he said he wants to leave a mark for guys like Ace and others to remember him. So he's already thinking about that legacy, which is huge. So that's big. So moving on to some of the bracketology things, as you talked about, VCU is squarely on the bubble. It's kind of, they're not safe for sure, but it's definitely fun to talk about because they're about as bubble team gets at this point. So, one of the premier bracketologists, obviously Joe Lunardi at ESPN, and after VCU's win over St Bonaventure on Tuesday, he moved them up from sort of his next four out to the next four out. So he has a first.
It's hard
four
to
out.
Keep track of the tiers.
Yeah, there's a bunch of tiers. He has a first four out, he has a next four out, then he has a next four out. So VCU was in the next four out, and now they're in the next four out. So they're kind of getting closer as far as his bracket goes, and that next four out also includes Virginia Tech and Dayton and Florida. Patrick Stevens, who does some bracketology for Washington Post, he put out a little piece on Tuesday talking about VCU season and about how you can't really judge a team start on just where they might be at the end of the season, and just talking about VCU's offense improvement over the year. And he has VCU in the field as an 11 seed facing Ohio State in the first round. So that's one that has VCU in. Jerry Palm at CBS Sports, he updated his bracket this morning on Thursday, and he has VCU in the first four.
Which most programs would not love to be there, but I think if you're VCU, you don't have a problem with being in the first four because of the history there.
Exactly. So I think anytime you mention VCU and first four in the same sentence, people who know, their ears perk up. So he would have them playing on Florida, and they would move on to play Texas in the West Regional if they won that game based on that projection. Andy Katz on NCAA.com, he had VCU in his first four out. But then he had another piece where he had VCU as one of his 10 most intriguing bubble teams, and he kind of mentioned that he feels like if they beat St Bonaventure, beat St Louis, then they should be in type of thing. USA Today had VCU in their first four out. Bleacher Report had VCU as the very first team out, but that was published on Tuesday morning, and their first four or their last team in was Indiana. Indiana lost to Rutgers on Wednesday in their home finale. So you would say that you figure they're now the bubble team that would kind of help VCU's case with their loss that they
had. Does the committee typically factor in injuries much? Is that something that they try and ignore? I know that it's been talked about sometimes when you get into bracketology conversations. Does VCU lose any credit for that Bonaventure win because Asunier was out?
That's a good question. I don't know if they lose credit because of the role that they've been on. For instance, if maybe they were a little bit up and down, maybe you take that injury more into account. But I think obviously the margin of victory, it goes into it. But the role that VCU has been on, I don't know how much they weigh that injury as much. But I'm glad you brought that up because I'm curious how they factor a Vince Williams injury into VCU's 30-point loss to Dayton, or Ace Baldwin injury into a couple of the early season losses that VCU had against a Wagner and a Chattanooga type of thing too. So it'd be interesting to see how that plays into things too. One more other bracket, Sports Illustrated, they had VCU in their first four out too. So as you can see, it's kind of like
you can't get much more on the bubble. Yeah.
They're right there. With still more work to do. I think they could afford to lose a game against St. Louis if they at least win one or two games in DC in the A-10 tournament. But I still, even if they win at St. Louis and then lose on a Friday in the A10 tournament, I think that really hurts their case.
Yeah.
So in either scenario, a win or a loss at St. Louis, I think they need to win at least one game in DC in the A10 tournament.
That first round A10 tournament game is probably or first round for VCU after the double bye is the key right now, right?
Yeah, very much so. There is precedent. VCU in 2019, they won 12 straight heading into the A10 tournament, won a regular season title, and they lost to Rhode Island on that first Friday in the quarterfinals. But again, that team at 112 straight, it's not quite 8 straight.
That's one of those Rhode Island nightmares that VCU fans have over the years.
Yeah, and again, VCU won the regular season title that year too. So VCU was in a little better spot that year than they are this year. So I think they may be a VCU this year, even if they do win that regular season title on the tiebreaker, they can't afford to lose on that Friday in the A10 tournament to get in, just the way the bubble is looking right now. So, but you never know. I think I think the Final Four team had worse odds getting in than this team does, and that Final Four team got in. So you can never really predict how the committee might swing some of these bubble teams, and there's always some surprises, like either on both sides of the way. Surprises of teams that get in, surprises of teams that get left out. So you never can really predict, but BCU can definitely, I think, sweat less if they win on Friday for sure.
It's fun being in this conversation almost every year, right? I mean, it can be stressful sometimes, but I think being a fan of a mid-major, a team that's right there, at the top of its conference most years, but you're obviously not in a Power 5 conference, and so you're right in that bubble conversation almost every year. It makes March more fun. I think even though it can be stressful many years because you're biting your nails down to Selection Sunday, but it can be really fun to be a fan of that program because you're looking at the other bubble teams, right? You're looking at the bid stealers in the conference tournaments and teams that aren't expected to win it. And that bubble shrinking is probably going to be something that VCU fans are keeping an eye on over these next couple weeks and where the upsets come in the other conference tournaments, because VCU is close enough that could be a really strong deciding factor in whether they get the at-large bid or not, how many bid stealers there are.
Yeah. That's always dicey. So I think in this year in particular, it will be for sure. So it's gonna be interesting. And like you said, I think it's almost more fun for. The A10 at this point, it's a high mid-major league. Like it's hard to say it's like a mid-major league, but it's still funner than say a Power 5 team.
Especially with Loyola coming in.
Yeah, that's gonna help the league a lot. But I think it's more fun to follow a team that's like a mid-major. Trying to fight its way in, then maybe like a middling ACC team or a middling, Big Ten team that's like, has not as good of a record in conference, and trying to get their way in, rather than a VCU team who's like really had to scrap for it and win 8 straight to get in. Like it's fun to see a team who knows their backs against the wall and that's performed the way it has. And it makes it exciting, even though maybe you have to be a little bit more nervous from year to year.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw a Bracketology tweet that I was pulling up the other day from Bracket Forecast, and this was before the Bonaventure game, but it illustrates how VCU really is right on that cut line, and especially going into the Bonaventure game, there was still a large range of outcomes here. VCU lost versus Bonaventure and win at St. Louis, you were right on the cut line. A win versus Bonaventure, a loss at St. Louis, you were right on the cut line. A loss versus both, your at-large was on life support. And if you win versus both, you had a 75% chance of getting in with the bid, is what this Bracketology forecast was saying. And so that illustrates that you were really right on that line. But the big one first was getting the win over Bonaventure, which they did in convincing fashion. And so they've set themselves up in a fantastic place to, if you go and get a win at St. Louis now, then you got to be feeling good going into the A10 tournament.
Yeah, that would be major.
That's a tough place to get a win, though.
Yeah, very, very much so. That's always a physical battle. St. Louis is 20 nationally in rebound margin at plus 6.8. I joke, I feel like St. Louis every year it's like a football team. Like they always have some big guys who can really rebound and really scrap it out.
Which is giving VCU trouble sometimes.
Yeah, a lot of troubles, and especially going on the road, having to go out there. But St. Louis, unfortunately, they lost one of their best players, Javante Perkins, before the season. A lot of people probably remember that. Left ACL tear, in their exhibition game that they had before the season. He was a second-team pick last year. He was a former Sixth Man of the Year in the league as well. But Yuri Collins, their point guard there, is really taking a huge leap. He's more than double the scoring average, averaging about 11 points per game. He's one of the top assist man in the country as well, with 8.3 assists. Averaging 2.1 steals. So he's kind of become their star in the backcourt, with Javante Perkins out. Then look at Francis Okoro, a big 6'9", 235-pounder. He won 18th Player of the Week this past week. averaging 10.8 points and a team best 7.9 rebounds.
Got to get multiple bodies on him down low. A VCU team that excels at that, rotating 4 bigs, probably going to need to get multiple guys down there to put bodies on him and rack up some fouls and match up with his physical play.
Yeah, I agree. I think we were talking before the show about Levi Stockard III. This is kind of a homecoming for him, St. Louis native. I think VCU's going to need a big game for him because he's their biggest big. He's their most stout guy inside. So against a guy like Okoro, I think they're going to need some big minutes from
some shot blocking from Hassan would be nice too.
Yeah, 100%. Which he had 6 against St Bonaventure. It's a new career high for him. And then Richmond native Gibson Jimerson, he had battled some injury issues early in his career, but now he's playing really well, averaging a team high 16.1 points for St. Louis. The former former Benedictine and St. Christopher's guy before he went to Montverde Academy in Florida to finish his prep career, but he's playing really well for St. Louis as well. So kind of get to play the hometown team for him out in St. Louis. And we talking about, St. Louis has been a tough matchup for VCU. There's been some close games, but going back and looking, I don't think I quite realized VCU has won 9 of the last 10 against St. Louis still. So even though there's been some scraps and some
seems
battles,
like a tougher matchup for them than that.
Yeah, but they prevailed pretty well against them in recent history. So that's gonna be interesting. And again, that would be a huge win for VCU trying to feel a little bit better about its at-large possibilities heading in. Who knows? This could all be for naught. The way VCU is playing, I feel they're a legit contender at the A10, title.
Absolutely.
They win that automatic bid too. But if they don't win that, I think a win at St. Louis they feel a lot better about it heading into next week. So
and VCU's been kind of the key to getting the A10 back in the multi-bid discussion, right? Yeah. With how hot VCU has been, because Davidson is on the right side of the bubble too. If they didn't win the A10 tournament, they'd probably still be an at-large team as well, right? An early exit might hurt them. Where is Davidson in relation to that bubble? Are they pretty comfortably in right now?
Yeah, pretty much every bracket that I've seen, they have them as the automatic bid, and so you like a 9 seed or a 10 seed. So they're pretty solidly in. But like you said, I feel like a month ago we were talking about, man, it's looking kind of bleak.
Like one big,
it could be a one big league, but VCU with the run they've gone on, they put it back into conversation where now it could be 2. Looks like realistically it could be 2 bids. You never know, even 3. If Dayton beats Davidson on Saturday, they put them on in better spot as well, because Dayton is right there on that bubble as well. They got a big win at Richmond on Tuesday night too. So
and a lot of scenarios too, right? I mean, if Dayton and VCU both push to the semifinals and even a loss later, at that point, if they win out up until that point, you could maybe still get 3 teams in.
Yeah, right. I agree. So
I believe there's a Twitter account that's actually called 3-Bid League. Yeah, so that's a point of contention in the A10 community.
Yeah, so that would be funny if they actually do get 3 teams in, live up to the league's name. And like you mentioned, I think that could become a little bit easier next season once Loyola Chicago is in.
Absolutely.
But yeah, the way things were looking a month ago, if the A10 gets 3 teams in, I think the league office are going to be throwing a party. so when it's not out of the realm of possibility at all. So it's going to be very fun to watch. Like, hard to believe, but Selection Sunday is just over a week away. So I'm going to be covering the St. Louis game remotely, so you can follow all our coverage on richmond.com/sports, and we'll be back next week to kind of talk about the A10 tournament and preview where VCU stands heading into that. So thanks for watching.
Thank you, guys.